I really enjoyed going into sales as my first opportunity in business because it taught me a lot about how money flows through a business, and it helped ingrain a lot of people skills in terms of being able to influence.
Welcome to the 7 Eagle Group podcast, your home for inspiring stories, valuable tips, and great advice from hard-charging veterans so you can lead a more rewarding and lucrative post-military career.
All right, guys, I am talking today with another just amazing veteran who has just done so much for this community, and he's got an amazing story. Just so excited to chat with Manny Rodriguez out of Dallas. He spent 10 years in the Army, 7 years of those he was deployed as a UH-60 Black Hawk pilot, and now he is the CEO of Living Earth Technology. They are a landscaping, gardening, and recycling green waste company. They have 30 stores, Texas and Tennessee, employs a ton of people, and cares deeply about this community. So I wanted to share his story with you guys and see if there's anything that you can learn from this and benefit. So Manny, thanks, buddy, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jordy. I appreciate you. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come on here and see how I might be able to help our brothers and sisters out there.
Outstanding. All right, let's start at the beginning. So what drew you to the Army? Where'd you grow up? Do you come from a military family?
Yeah, my father was a Vietnam veteran, and he sat me down pretty early and said, I didn't go to college. Your mom didn't go to college. We did just fine for ourselves. They were self-made folks, and very proud of that. And it was good at that point that I had been attracted to military service early on. I had been inspired by my father's service in the 60s, and he walked me down to the recruiter at 17 years old because he had to sign as a parent. And I enlisted in the Georgia Army National Guard as a tanker, the old M1A1 Abrams tanks, and luckily I was afforded the opportunity to have a scholarship to go to North Georgia College. It's now University of North Georgia. It's one of the 6 senior military colleges. In order to earn my commission. And I commissioned in 2000 into aviation and flew Black Hawks. But luckily, and not to correct you, I did not spend 7 years of that deployed. I did deploy in 2003 to 2005 with my unit to Iraq.
Gotcha. So what was the switch from work, being on tanks to flying? What brought that about?
It was a great opportunity. Part of me had always wanted to fly, and my godfather had been a backseater in F-105s in Vietnam, and was an Air Force guy. And for me, something about the Army really attracted me. And as a young kid, I was, I guess, kind of in love with armored vehicles and tanks at the time, and it was a chance to go in and play with toys. And going into armor for me was one of the branches where it was kind of like the recruiting commercials, because I remember being at Fort Knox, and it must have been our first or second week in armor school, because it's one station unit training. It's not a separate basic, and then your skills school, what they call AIT, right? Advanced Individual Training. It's one station unit training, so it's all the way through. And first or second week, they march you down to the motor pool, and you start crawling all over the tanks, and they start teaching you how to be a tanker, which was a lot of fun. Plus, it was the opportunity, if I remember, is the opportunity that the drill sergeants could not mess with you in the motor pool. They handed you off to instructors. And those guys were pretty cool. They were firm, but they weren't yelling at you. They didn't want you to be nervous and hurt yourself. And so when I had the opportunity to earn my commission and go aviation, learn how to fly, definitely took it.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that, because there was a lot of lifelong relationships and developed, especially from our deployment to the Middle East.
Oh, I bet. Looking back now at your your time in service, what do you take away the most from that? Like, how did that make you into the person you are today? How'd that help you in the business world?
I think it gives you a gift of perspective, and which works for us and against us as veterans. Because, and what I mean by perspective is we as veterans are trained to perform well under stress. And typically, there are levels of stress that people who came up through a civilian business life right out of school or in the workforce, they don't have that same perspective of 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 that level of stress or the demands. And uh, so I think that we put up with a lot more, right? We can put up with a lot more higher levels of stress, go farther, faster, harder than maybe our peers can. But it also, I've seen it work against veterans where they will put up with a lot more in the workplace than maybe they should.
Yeah.
And they're grateful to have an opportunity, and they might put up with some things that their peers who have never had those experiences don't put up with. So I believe that gift of perspective really allows us to reach a higher level of performance, bring calm when everybody else is freaking out or feeling high levels of anxiety. That's the area of leadership that veterans can bring to a team.
Yeah, and you probably can't teach that to someone. They have to live through the experiences the way you did, you know. Hard-
Absolutely.
Hardens them up, gives them grit, the toughness. That's all. Talk a little bit about, Manny, your transition when you got out and what you do and what was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, I came off active duty in 2002, went to my guard unit, and a year and a half later we were deployed. So pulled
Mm.
back on active duty for almost 18 months, and and the when I went back to the guard unit, I was reaching about 10 years of service, uh, and uh, and I really needed to make a decision whether I wanted to uh, go active guard, go back to active duty, or stay in the guard and continue that portion of my career. And um, and I needed my first big boy job, right? So I had a mentor when I worked at North Georgia in the recruiting department. There was some time between graduation and my time to go uh, for flight school after I commissioned and graduated. And the director of recruiting at the time said, "Hey, you've got a knack for sales, so you should probably look at the sales side." And so many veterans get funneled into operational roles by the
Yeah.
nature of our work, regardless of what you do in the military. Just about every non-commissioned officer or officer out there has an informal project management certification from just having to lead people and
Yep.
just get stuff done, right? And and so I went into financial services. Uh, I didn't go to school to go into business. I actually went to school to teach school. I thought I was going to do 20 or 30 years in the Army and come out and be a high school teacher, coach baseball, coach football, and
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
opportunities throws you curveballs. And I had one of those, uh, and so I really enjoyed going into sales as my first in business, because it taught me a lot about how money flows through a business,
Yeah.
and it helped ingrain a lot of people skills in terms of being able to influence, right?
Yeah.
And those folks, especially with leadership in the Army or in the service period, so many people on the civilian side think that military leadership means I say it, you do it, there's no questions asked.
Yeah.
And that's not how I was taught. That's not how I was taught when I was enlisted. That's not how I was taught as an officer in aviation. Uh, and there's a little bit that you have to overcome there, right? Yes, the way that we speak to folks sometimes may need to be polished when they first get out, and that was a real challenge for me,
Yeah.
because I had a very aggressive personality, and I needed to work on that. Uh, and I had a mentor by the name of Randy, who had been a paratrooper, was involved in the invasion of Panama, and was a business general manager for a company I worked for after I left financial services, and I worked directly for him. And he taught me a lot about uh, how to run a P&L, how to run a business, how to lead people inside of that
Yeah.
organization. And it was a great organization that I worked for, and he really set me up for success. We're friends to this day. He actually married my wife and I.
Ah,
Uh,
that's great.
he's an ordained minister. So, um, but
That's cool.
I would tell a veteran to find another veteran
Yeah.
and develop a mentorship
Yep.
relationship, whether it's inside that company or if they're in transition and they're not working somewhere yet. Find a mentor that can help them shape their message.
Yep. Someone who's been there before. I love your advice about or your path, how you started in sales. I'm just a big believer of that for a lot of veterans. I just think there's no better skill to have in corporate America than the ability to sell and generate good money for you and your family and develop those lifelong skills. So
Mhm.
that's great. Talk a little bit about now your current gig is running Living Earth Technology and what you guys do and how that came about.
Well, so I run what is short the Let Go Group. That's Living Earth Technology Company, and we are a group of companies that specializes in sustainability. Our tagline is where sustainability begins, and we've got our hands in a lot of different areas, but primarily, have you ever wondered where the tree in your front yard goes after the landscaper takes it away, or what happens to all that green waste you might put onto the curb? Well, it probably comes to a company like ours. And if you're in the Nashville, Knoxville, DFW, or Houston area, it probably comes to our company. And what we take that material, depending on what type of material it is, and we take it through a production process, and it can becomes mulch, compost, and a variety of soils. And we also sell aggregates. Those are like rocks, pebbles, flagstone, things like that. So it's a building materials company, and we service municipalities, contractors, and we also service homeowners, either directly or through the contracting chain. And I started in this role in April. We are a private equity backed company, and this is actually my third time being a CEO. And once in the healthcare space, then once in the technology and manufacturing space. So it's been quite a ride, and I wouldn't have been able to get to this point, I think, without the leadership experiences, especially the failures that I made
Oh yeah.
along the way. We definitely learn more from our failures than our successes.
No doubt, no doubt there. What advice, Manny, would you have for transitioning service members coming out who maybe they're making pivots and trying a different career path? They're nervous, they don't know which way to go, how to present themselves. What are there any sort of favorite tips or suggestions you have for these men and women who are looking to embark on their new careers?
Yes, I believe going back to a previous comment, finding a mentor
Yep.
and a group of people who have already walked that path. Sometimes it is still about who you know and not what you know.
Yeah.
But if what you know matches can line up with who you know, and you can find a way in order to be able to monetize that,
Yeah.
either through employment or through your own business, um, do something that's going to continue to drive that passion inside of you. And if your passion is for leadership, find a way to lead a team.
Yeah.
If your passion is sales, then look at professional sales in technology. Everybody's talking about AI, but there's a lot of infrastructure behind AI, and somebody has to sell that infrastructure. And those companies are very attracted to the discipline and teamwork that veterans bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great advice. And last question, if you could help us talk to other business owners out there in America who've never hired military, never had a vet on their team, why should they consider this great talent pool?
So, if you're looking for somebody who is selfless, who puts the team and their needs above their own, a leader who's going to eat last and make sure that the resources that you give them to accomplish a goal are given to their team properly. If you want somebody who is trained on how to mentor and coach right off the bat, if you want somebody who's not likely going to get flustered when the proverbial business bullets start flying, when the angry customer calls start coming in, when deadlines are fast approaching, a veteran, especially those who have led, are not likely to get flustered in those situations.
Right.
They can bring stability to a team. They can bring character, ethics, morals to the team, and form an example for others to follow
Yeah.
if done correctly.
Yep, I love it. Outstanding. So well said. Manny, thank you so much for doing this and sharing a little bit of your story, and truly appreciate what you do for this community, and you lead by example. It's the best part. So we'll put his link to his site in the comments here. Make sure and reach out to him, connect on LinkedIn if you're watching. And again, thank you so much, Manny. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jordy.